Good morning to everyone who has joined us this morning for this webinar on AgrAbility. We actually have presenters here today from the program, Cindy Kovar. We're going to introduce some of us. We'll turn over to her after we talk about everybody that's here, and we'll move on from there. And then about GCPD, which is the Governor's Committee on Peoples with Disabilities. They have a mission to further opportunities for persons with disabilities to enjoy the full and equal access to lives of independence, productivity, and self-determination. GCPD recommends changes in disability policies and programs in the areas of accessibility, communication, criminal justice, education, emergency preparedness, employment, health, housing, transportation, and veterans. The committee also supports a network of committees on peoples with disabilities, issues awards to promote greater awareness, and promotes compliance with disability-related laws. Now, as far as general information, with this presentation, the chat is disabled, but if you have any questions, feel free to do the Q&A, and you can ask your questions there. Most of the questions I can answer towards the end of the presentation. Now, please avoid using your personal questions. Make it more general for everyone so you can have those questions answered. There will be an email as well with the Zoom link on this recording, so you can have access to that. We will actually have surveys as well that will get feedback from you as well. We always appreciate your feedback in general. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Cindy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you and welcome everyone. Should I leave my camera on during the presentation? Yes, okay, thank you. All right. I never find a good place to put the camera, y'all, because I'm going to look at my notes over here and the presentation is over here. So please know that I am attentive. So my name is Cindy Kovar. I'm the program manager for Texas AgrAbility. We cover the whole state of Texas, which is all 254 counties. And as you know, Texas is pretty big. There are AgrAbilities in about 22 other states. So it is it's throughout the United States, and most states, almost half. And everybody has, works towards a similar mission. So I'm going to get started and kind of let you know what we do and how we could assist you guys if you're working in the agriculture business. And let me see when we get the slides there. Okay, so just want to share, there's a image here of a gentleman farmer getting into his truck by the weight of a lift chair. And so today I'm really excited to share with you some assistive technology and how it's transforming the agriculture business for farmers and ranchers with disabilities, and how together we can build in a more inclusive rural community. We are Texas A&M University, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, and we are funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So our mission is to assist farmers, ranchers, and agricultural workers in Texas who are living with disabilities, chronic health conditions, or functional limitations, enabling them to work or continue to work in production of agriculture. We also do a lot of education of other folks so that they can be aware of the challenges of folks with disabilities. For example, this Friday, I'll be teaching at a Master Gardener's class in Denton, which is in the North Texas area, and trying to, even though they're not really in the agricultural business, they are planting little gardens, and we want them to be able to work through their disability on a smaller scale. So do lots of different outreach. So picture, and once we change the slide here. There we go. That's actually one of our clients. He's has an amputation of a leg, and when we first met him, he was getting around with just a walker on his farm. So you can imagine that's not very ergonomic or accessible with those thin wheels, and the the ground is very textures and stuff. So one of the farming is one of the oldest and most physically demanding professions in the world. But what happens when a farmer becomes disabled due to illness or injury or aging? and someone with a disability dreams of working the land. So we work with folks. I mean, some people are like, well, do they have to have an amputation or do they have to be in a wheelchair? No, they can have something as simple as arthritis or bad back. Not that those are simple, but they're a lot less severe disabilities than what most people think we would serve. So we serve a whole spectrum of folks with disabilities. In the United States, there are 634,000 farmers and ranchers who live with disabilities, and many of those remain active, productive, and independent. And a lot of that is due to the growing role of assistive technology. And so we're going to talk about some of that assistive technology today. So this is our same farmer here. And he is now getting off his tractor and he's reaching for his walker in the image. And so those physical and cognitive disabilities can create real obstacles for farm operations. And this might include mobility issues like climbing onto a tractor or navigating rough terrain, or sensory impairments like limited vision, or hearing, or cognitive disabilities such as those that might be caused by conditions like PTSD or other things that may affect decision making and time management skills. I'm going to slow down because I know I tend to talk too fast. Beyond the physical, there are economic and social challenges. And adaptive equipment can be costly, and many rural communities lack those support services. There's also stigma, isolation, and a lack of understanding. And despite these challenges, many farmers persevere, especially when given the right tools. What I have seen, because we directly go to the farmers on their farm, we actually meet them where they live and work. They are just so they have like an ingenuity kind of way of fixing things. So they come up with a lot of solutions to things that don't even exist to help them to accommodate their disability. So I'm always like amazed at what they've done themselves to do some assistive technology to help them out. And of course, we know that anytime it's called assistive technology, it's about 5 times the price of what maybe a stool would be, or something like that. That's not considered assistive technology. So unfortunately, if we put the words assistive technology on the front of any kind of tool, the price is going to about double or sometimes as much as 5 times the amount. So a lot of times they are able to adapt an existing item or tool to meet the needs of their disability. So they're very, very creative. Let's go to the next slide. Should have money signs on it. So on this slide, it's just some dollar signs. And so again, that adaptive equipment is very costly. And so there's sometimes limited financial resources available, especially we're talking about small family-run operations. Most people don't realize that most of the farms in Texas and really throughout the United States are not big corporate farms. They're very small mom and pop farms that have been in families sometimes for hundreds of years. Many of these rural areas suffer from social stigma, lack of awareness, and isolation, making it even harder for those individuals to seek help or connect with resources. One thing about farmers is they don't farm to retire. They farm for life. Like it's like a lifestyle. It's not like a profession. And so we'll see farmers a lot of times much older than you might expect. The average age of farmers in Texas is 60 years old. Okay, most people, yeah, wow. Most people at 60 are thinking about retiring, but that's our average age of farmers. So that's really pretty outstanding. And these folks have been farming for 40, 50 years, even at that point, because they were often children on the farm, working the farm as well. So we'll go to the next slide. You'll see some tools. So these are just a few examples of some ergonomic tools available. So the one in the first image is some regular gardening tools for you guys with sight limitations where they just are at a 90-degree angle rather than a straight across handle. And those can often take the pressure off the wrist and the elbows to make simple gardening tasks much more efficient and less hard on the body. And then the other image shows a hydraulic lift table, which is kind of a scissor design. So it opens much like a pair of scissors does, can come up to the different heights so that you're working at a more comfortable height so it doesn't put so much strain on your back and knees. And so this could even be something that if you weren't a farmer, but maybe you were like you did crafts or painting or cooking and you just never find a table space that's at a height that doesn't cause you additional discomfort or pain, that might be something you might want to consider to use for that need as well, because it will, you can adjust it up and down. It's hydraulic to a point where it's really comfortable for you to be standing at. So good use of tools there. And we'll go to the next slide. And so there's a lot of modifications on machinery. We definitely, we've got a lot of farmers and ranchers that are transferring from chairs onto tractors and stuff. So this image shows a gentleman with a chair lift on the back of a pickup truck getting lifted into a very large tractor. And so a lot of my farmers can physically lift themselves even if they're paralyzed into the tractor. But you can imagine the overuse and overwear of their shoulders and arms as they pull themselves into the equipment day in, day out many times. So we're going to try to reserve their energy levels and try to keep them from having shoulder injuries that may, increase their disability, because now they've torn a shoulder along with, having paralysis. So we're going to try to keep them from having those additional injuries. A lot of times we'll advocate for good ergonomic seats in the tractors, because all of us can benefit by that ergonomic seat when we've been in a tractor, 8 or 10 hours a day. We've already got a bad back, bad knees, or maybe paralysis. We're sitting a lot of time throughout the day anyway. So that can help, from causing additional problems that may come with long-term sitting. Okay. And the next image, please. So this is showing you some additional tools. Some of the things that we're showing here is a regular garden rake with the addition of a handle to it, and a somewhat normal shovel type design. It really looks more for snow, which we don't even get in Texas hardly, but it's got an additional handle. So it's got two handles rather than one. The smaller handle is coming off the stem of the larger handle so that you can use two hands to shovel, and that's going to make that a little bit more ergonomic. So things that are available, as well as like a tiller, which would till the land, the dirt, and it's got hand controls that are a little more ergonomic and easy to adapt with, maybe where you have limited hand strength and stuff. So there's simple changes there. And then also too, that tiller with those ergonomic handles, I know women are able to do just whatever, but we sometimes are not as physically strong as men. And so we've got a lot of female farmers and ranchers. And so this is going to be something that would be a little more adaptive, just because as women we're not quite so physically strong as men, and so may make this a little bit easier tool for us to be able to use even without a disability. So just some things to mention. And then the next image, please. This is showing one of our farmers who's wheelchair bound, and he is being assisted into his John Deere tractor, which is green and yellow, with the assistance of a lift chair. So he's able to transfer from one chair to the other chair, thus saving that energy and making it for a more safe transfer. He's got hand controls in that tractor so that since he's got limited leg mobility, or no leg mobility in this case, he can still run the tractor. This hydraulic lift system mounts to the outside of the machinery so that it's not affecting the general use of the tractor. He has adaptive tools that he can use with one hand, so he can run the gas and the brakes with that one hand control. We're going to put him with hearing protective devices, because the machinery is very loud and we don't want him to have an additional challenge of loss of hearing. So we're going to try to protect his hearing. And there's also GPS auto systems that we can put in, and they just kind of program them, and they basically, it's kind of like those automated driving cars where it kind of just runs the field, and they just kind of, make sure everything's safe. So those are available. And then a lot of times we'll advocate for a rear view camera in the back of the tractor, because then they don't have to turn so much and they can see what's behind them. It also helps with hooking up machinery, trailers, and things like that. So those backup cameras are about $100. They're very easy to install yourself. And so it's something that we're all often going to, advocate for our farmers to have, to one, save that, constant turning, and then just be more safe to be able to clearly see behind them. Okay, we're going to hit the next image. And for any of you gamers, this is basically just steering wheels and pedals and joystick controlled equipment like you might be using for gaming. And these can oftentimes be used not only to control the tractor, but maybe open the gate so they don't have to get down off the tractor to open the gate. So these are just things that maybe a gamer would be using. They have some use in the farming and ranching community too when they're hooked up efficiently. So for all my gamers out there. Next image. So this is an automatic gate opener. There's a lot of different types of automatic gates. Again, you can imagine how much energy is extended getting off and on the tractor out of the pickup truck to open a gate. So some of these are remote controlled. So they just like you're going into your garage, maybe you hit a remote control, you go into your garage. Some of these are considered a bump gate where you barely bump them and they're designed to go ahead and open up for you. Some of them are kind of a drive over gate. So there's lots of different options. But again, we're trying to conserve energy and we're trying to keep them from future injuries. And then if you're not in the farming and ranching community, what you don't think about is the reason we have gates is to keep livestock in or out, depending on the situation. And so generally we're going to have a lot of livestock around the farmer or rancher. We don't want them to be injured by the livestock as they're trying to get through the gate. And so that makes it a little bit more efficient so that the farmers staying on the tractor where they're more safe than where the cattle could definitely push them over if they're in a wheelchair or something and cause further injury or worse. Okay, and then we'll go to the next slide. So there's lots of little simple devices. This again is like a little, you'll see in the picture, it's a long pole with a clipper at the end of it and squeeze handles, trigger handles, kind of like you would see in like a water hose sprayer. And that is used to clip any kind of things that's out of reach, maybe doing some pruning of trees or cutting berries or even sometimes there's shorter ones of these they might use for like harvesting okra or something that's very spiky, might cut them. And so it gives them a little bit more leverage for reaching without getting out of their seated position. So again, something useful if you're a little bit, you're not quite so tall and you could use something at your own house to trim things. That would be a useful tool for you as well. Okay. All right. So, depending on the person's disability, we got a lot of folks that actually come to us straight out of the military. So we work with a lot of veterans that have done their service and now they're looking into getting into the farming and ranching community. They're oftentimes still what I consider very young in their early 30s or 40s. And oftentimes when they've been in the military, they come out with some type of injuries due to the nature of the work. And so these are some prostheses that, can help them do their farming and ranching task. And they're designed for those tasks of picking or holding or something. So they may not have what we would think of as a normal hand-like orthotic or prostheses. And it would maybe look more like a claw or something that may tend to lend itself better for operating equipment on a farm. And then perhaps they would have another set of these for more everyday life living kind of tasks, that when they were working, they might have different prosthetics. Again, they're very expensive, but they can definitely help to enhance mobility and help them to be able to do their task. Okay. Next slide, please. We've got a farmer on a red tractor, and he is wearing a hearing, uh, oh, what are those called? I totally lost my thought. It's to protect your hearing when there's loud noises. And so he's got those on his ears because the machinery is very loud. And so those earphones, I believe is what they're called. I'm losing my thoughts here, but just something to protect their hearing. So a lot of people are challenged with hearing loss and maybe they have some hearing and they certainly don't want to lose what they've got. And certainly those folks that have no hearing loss want to protect their hearing so they're not faced with hearing loss. We have a lot of folks come in out of the military that have experienced hearing loss because of the nature, again, of their jobs. And our farmers and ranchers, generally have some hearing loss because, again, they're working with heavy machinery that makes a lot of noise. They're on those tractors 8 or 10 hours a day. And so sometimes we see a lot of folks that are, having the challenges of dealing with hearing loss. And so trying to protect those ears, firsthand, especially for young children, that would be really important to keep from having those challenges later on. And so there are some amplified hearing protections that sometimes will, not only keep the machinery sounds down, but maybe they can still hear other things. And then we have like LED lighting that may help with visual clarity. And I already mentioned those backup cameras, which are so useful for everyone. So even if you happen to be a person in a regular streetcar that you drive to work and stuff, and maybe it's an older model vehicle, I would highly recommend you look into getting a backup camera. They're very easy to install if you're a little bit on the handy side. And if not, they can be easily installed by your mechanic, and they're about $100 a piece. So they're very reasonable, and they definitely add to the safety of your experience as a vehicle driver. Okay. The next slide shows a gentleman walking, holding onto a rope, and he's pulling a cart, and he's visually impaired. And so he's got this system where he's able to follow his route. So he is able to hold on to the rope and know if he's going perhaps from the house to the barn or whatever, and it helps with his visual impairment. So very simple modification. It's not something you can do when you're navigating, being in town to the grocery store or something, but on the farm, then he can definitely, be able to navigate that way. I've, seen farmers tie different knot patterns in their field rows, so they know this row is corn if it's 2 knots, and this row is cotton if it's 3 knots. Because when it's really small, it's very hard to just touch and feel and figure out what plant it is. So sometimes they'll do a knot system to remind themselves what is exactly planted in that particular area. We've got another farmer who is legally blind, and she has a sidewalk poured where she can drive her four-wheeler, and somehow she's able to stay on that. I don't know how she does it, but she does. And at least she's not running into trees as long as she stays on her little sidewalk. So she's done some adaptations there and still is running her farm. And she's in that average age we talked about earlier of about 60. So she's pretty amazing. Okay. The next slide has got some different feeders and waters. So there's red devices with like cups or bowls, an orange device with like a cup or bowl, and that is set up so that the farmer can use on a timer where, every day at 4 o'clock, the food comes out in a measurable amount. And sometimes those are even run off your phone on like an app so that the farmer or rancher is not getting in and out of the vehicle again to feed and water. And of course, these are very small devices that are being shown now, but they have much larger devices. And so you may think, how many cows can I feed with that? Well, these are just small ones, and they do come in multitude of sizes. We also have feeders that attach to the back of a pickup truck or a tractor. And so the food is loaded in hundreds of pounds at a time, and then it can be dispensed to the animals without the farmer or rancher having to lift every small section of feed to the livestock. So there's lots of different devices there that can help those folks out. Okay, the next image, please. This is a livestock chute. Trying to think how to explain it. It's basically a lot of metal with an entry area, and it kind of squeezes you in. The cattle, that is, not yourself, but it kind of squeezes them within a large metal panel for you guys that are visually impaired, and it holds them into place so that the farmer can navigate with the livestock without fear of getting hurt themselves. So oftentimes there's vaccinations or immunizations that have to be given to livestock. If they're calves, they may have to be cut. They may have to be tagged with the ear tag. There's a lot of different things. So these are very comfortable for the cows. It doesn't look like it. It's kind of like a big hug from either side. But the farmer or rancher is very safe. They kind of go in that chute, then they release them. And so they're not harmed, and they're actually kind of calmer because it's kind of like a big hug coming from either side. They're not being pinched or anything, but it still keeps them from sitting down or laying down so that the farmer or rancher can do that medical maintenance for them. Maybe they're getting ready to calf, and then the veterinarian may be checking them for that reason. So those kind of things. Many of the farmers use a tagging system on their ears, and they can know that, because after you get 100 head of cattle, not all of them can be Betsy or bacon or, well, that's cows, but the steak or whatever. And so they have a tag on them with a number. So that indicates, that if I look up tag number 33, well, 33 is already calved this year. They've already had their shots this year. Weight they're needing this yet. So that way they can keep up with their livestock by the number tags. And then oftentimes those tags will have the name of the farm and ranch so that it identifies that livestock if they happen to get out. So there's different ways to keep up with those livestock that way. So they're getting really good care because we're not having a second guess or give somebody 2 shots or something because one came through again. So it's a much safer method of maintaining the health of our cattle. Okay. The next image shows another steering wheel. It shows a video screen, and it shows some plug-in devices. So these are all just some GPS guided tours, tractor equipment, auto steering systems. We talked earlier a little bit about the GPS. So they actually just set this much like you would set your GPS to go to a new town that you weren't familiar with or someone's house that you hadn't been to before. And so it allows for precision farming and minimal manual output. And so, it streamlines record keeping. We know exactly what's been planted or when, if we're entering that into the system. It helps with inventory. It helps with task planning. So even these small mom and pop farms, they're really a lot more technology advanced than what people would think. The gone is the day of the paper ledger. Okay, they're much more in tune to a lot of the recent software because the thing about a farm or ranch is you're everything. You're planting, you're harvesting, you're bookkeeping, you're purchasing. You're doing everything, and so as much as we can streamline, the better. So a lot of families the one spouse may be the person that takes care of all the paperwork, and another spouse may take care of all the feeding or whatever. So there's a lot of chores that need to be done, and so the technology definitely helps to streamline some of that stuff and keeps better records than if we were just keeping it in an old ledger like they did many years ago. Okay. The next image has a telephone, a cell phone, and a tablet, and just showing again. You can see on the screen where they have cattle pinpoints. So there's little on the telephone or the cell phone. There's a little circle with a cow, and that's where we know where they've been fed or maybe they've been vaccinated or whatever. So we can kind of know what pasture they're in as to what's been going on. So it's just again a way of using those technologies to help manage the farm. So it's different apps available that can help streamline those chores. Okay, the next image. So in the picture, there's another table similar to the one I showed earlier that lifts up and down. It's not a scissor design, but it still lifts up and down for working on equipment or, small hand tasks or maybe processing food, vegetables or those kind of things. Also in the image is a couple of wheelchair ramps to get up some steps. And so just showing some of the modified equipment. And so, having those things definitely makes it more accessible for everybody. I know you guys being in the disability field of work probably recognize. I know I was at a hotel in Austin the other day for a disability conference, and the steps to the hotel were just like 2 or 3, and you're right in the door. But I took the wheelchair ramp because I had a suitcase. I didn't want to haul it up the stairs, and it was like, I mean, I walked way down to the end and around the corner and then back up, and I'm like, well, how inclusive is this when I'm walking so much further than the average person to get into the building. It wasn't very inclusive. Even though I could navigate it, it was a lot more walking and a lot larger distance to come in and loop back around. So not everything is as inclusive as they think it is. And I know I'm singing to the crowd here, but so trying to make things more accessible. Barns and workspaces obviously are not, and so sometimes we need these little ramps. Some other things we can do is do like raised garden beds or modular greenhouses. My daddy just turned 81 years old, and he's a farmer. Has been his whole life. He grew up as a kid on a farm. He was also an industrial blacksmith when he was still working. He's retired now, but he still farms. And he grows enough. He doesn't sell anything anymore. He grows enough to feed a small community. Okay, you just can't stop growing. He went hungry as a child, and so he always has had a garden because he didn't want that experience again. So he has finally at 81, because he's not as mobile as he used to be. He's going to keep up with most people in their 60s. I'm going to tell you, but he finally has gone to raised garden bed. So he's got a bunch of 50-gallon barrels that he's had cut to a waist height, and he's gardening everything in these multitude of barrels. He probably has 16 or 20 barrels. So he has still a large garden space than most people, but he's not having to get down on his knees and bend and lift. He's got back problems. He's got a back insert thing that, stimulates the spinal cord. So he's got his share of problems, but hey, he's 81 years old, right? But is he going to give up farming? No. But we finally have talked him into doing this, container gardening basically, so that he can continue what he loves. He's, going to be able to do it at a lot less risk of injury and still be able to farm. So that's worked out really good. So, is that going to work good for anybody, even if you don't have a disability? Absolutely. The less we're down on our knees and backs and stuff, it's a lot less chance of injury. So those are good things to have. His are not pretty. They're 50-gallon barrels. Okay. You can get really cute little galvanized containers like a Tractor Supply or something like that if you want to be all cute and bougie, right? But those vegetables are going to taste the same. Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's also things like automated milking systems, seated mowers so they can sit down while they're mowing. Um, uh, every kind of adaptation that you might expect, is definitely out there because, as we know, anybody with a disability does not look like the next person with a disability. Okay. Even if we have two people in a wheelchair, their challenges are not going to be the same. And so we have to completely always be thinking about how do we adapt to this specific person, even though things may similarly work for somebody, they don't work for everybody. And you guys already know that. Okay, yay. Let's go to the next image. And so the next image actually shows two people in wheelchairs that are working with uh, gardens that are planted at waist level, and they're able to get the chairs right up to them. This is actually in a greenhouse, and we see lots of little seedlings where they're beginning the growth of their plants. But a lot of people will grow a whole myriad of vegetables in a greenhouse. We have a lot of hydroponic gardeners, which, they don't even use soil. And so we've got some hydroponic farmers that, grow lots of tomatoes or lettuce or microgreens or a whole variety of things. And they're all doing them at waist level so that it's more accommodating and more inclusive. If you're in the audience today and you've never really grown anything, you might try microgreens. You can actually get those like at some feed stores. You can get them off of Amazon, and you basically just are, growing those in water, and within about a week, you have enough to make a salad. So that's really good for somebody just getting started. If you live in town, I'm actually a farm girl, but I live in town, but I keep tomatoes and peppers and asparagus and a couple of fig trees and things like that in my little garden in town. And I live right in the middle of town. I have to fight with the deer because I have a lot of deer in my neighborhood, and try to keep some cages around them because the deer really like my vegetables. But it's something that even with a very small parcel of land, even if you live in an apartment, you have a balcony, you can still grow some basic maybe herbs or tomatoes or something like that. So don't discount if you don't really have a space that you're not able to do it. Most people can grow something. And it's very rewarding to be able to, eat whatever you grow, even if it's a small portion. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. We've got a gentleman on a smaller red tractor. And so he's going to, this is for seeded mowing and tilling. So instead of having to push a tiller, he's able to sit on this big oversized tractor. You guys that are visually impaired, it basically looks like an oversized riding lawnmower. And he's able to operate that. If he has lower limb disabilities, he can have those uh, gas and brake pedal adjusted to be hand operated as well. I'm working with a farmer right now who, again, these farmers are so creative, but he's been running his tractor with a cane. So he's pushing a cane on the brake and on the gas pedal. That's not safe. And so that cane could easily slip. So we are working with some adjustment pedals that kind of attach to the gas or our brake pedals so that they're more solid. They're not going to slip off, because the last thing we want him to do is get another injury or run into someone or something because he's unable to stop with the help of his cane. So we're going to help him with that adaptation. We're in the process with that. All right, this is showing a cow being milked, and so there's a milk machine under the tits of the cow, and so that's going to reduce the strain from manual milking, and so it's definitely going to help people with lower limb disabilities. So that automated milking system for dairy farmers with physical limitations. There's also things for irrigation and fencing and adaptations and stuff. A lot of things that are going to make their chores more doable. I'm not going to say easy, because being a farmer is never easy, but so this would, milk the cow. Once the tits are in the little suction cups, the cow will just be able to stand there, and they'll be able to milk them and then disconnect the cow, and then she'll go on and get her food. So they get very used to this very quickly. It's how we get our milk and cheese, guys. All that cream cheese and stuff y'all like. Okay, the next image. This is a big long sprayer that has water, or sometimes they'll even put chemicals in it for fertilizer or something. And so this is a long, it's probably covering 500 feet or longer. It's multi sprinklers coming down onto the field. It's got a wheeled device that's help wheeling it, like a little, little wheels down the rows to help rotate it throughout the field. And so this is something where the field is watered efficiently, because we can water a large area at a time. New to farming and ranching, you guys, is actually drones. It's amazing what we're doing with drones. We have a young farmer. He's like 35. He was in a car crash, and he's in a chair now. And he is running a very successful drone business currently by doing fertilizers and pesticides with his drone for folks in the fields. So in the past, we would have like little small airplanes, come over and crop dust the areas. And so these drones are a lot more accurate, because a crop duster was relying upon his vision and using some kind of visual point, like, am I so far from the tree? This is the farmer's pasture. Maybe he scoops over it twice in an area or something. And so these drones are actually set with GPS, and so they can very precisely go and distribute the chemicals, whether it be fertilizer or pesticide, and help with that process. I have another farmer that is a cotton farmer, and they were using the drones to check the cotton field for boll weevils. So you guys that are not familiar with cotton, boll weevils are very destructive to cotton, and so we don't want the boll weevils. It's a beetle on the cotton, because it'll kill it, and then we don't have t-shirts and jeans and all the things we love cotton for. And so they were using the drone to go visually check to see, do we have boll weevils? And they would fly the drone over the cotton, and they were not seeing any boll weevils. Okay, there was no boll weevils. They're like, yay, no boll weevils. But then upon someone going out there and visually checking, do we have boll weevils? They had a lot of boll weevils. And they're like, wait, what's happening? Well, what they realized was that the drone puts out so much wind when it's circulating that it was knocking the boll weevils off onto the ground. And then they were crawling back up, So then as soon as they were visually checking it with the drone, looked like they had no boll weevils because they were being blown off. And then when they walked to the actual field, here, of course, the boll weevils have crawled back on. So they then had to take the drone, put the chemicals in it, and kill the boll weevils. So it's not 100% accurate, but it's definitely a good tool depending on your needs. We have some farmers use the drones like when the cows are calving. So when they're having their babies and we don't want to get too close to the mama cows because they're very protective and they're more likely to harm you right after they've had a calf or with a young calf. So the farmer is able to take the drone into the pasture and look for any of the mama calves, the mamas and baby calves that have been born, so they can understand, who all calved a calf last night. Because in the springtime, early spring, February, March, we're going to have hundreds of calves per farm being, born in a week. So they're always checking to see that the calves were successful, birth. So that drone use has been very helpful for that, looking over the mama cows and the calves. So, all right. I'll give y'all a second to catch up here. The next image shows a occupational therapist helping a person with some knee problems. And so, technology is obviously a great solution, but, sometimes we have to have professional support when we do have an injury to help us to rehabilitate through that injury. And so occupational therapists actually work with farmers because they got to realize that farming task is very specific to other daily tasks. So they need to be able to adapt and recuperate in order to do their tasks that they were doing prior to the injury. So a lot of those services will help farmers and ranchers, the occupational therapist, and help them to rehabilitate. We take on a couple of 3 occupational therapy students each year. They work with us during their capstone project, and so these young individuals are about to start in the real world, and so this is kind of their last stop before their real jobs. And so it's really nice to be able to give these individuals kind of a look at, what exactly is the challenges these farmers are facing, and, where are we going to do to rehabilitate them? They understand how the body works. We understand how they have to get on equipment. And so we work with them. And so it's a great opportunity. I call them kids because they're all early 20s. I've got kids that age myself, but, these young folks are able to be exposed to real world situations and be able to really help folks. Um, Here at the office, we actually have an occupational therapist on staff. And so every time we go out to a farm, we bring a disability specialist, we bring myself, we bring an occupational therapist. Depending on the situation, sometimes we bring an engineer that we have on staff, and everybody kind of works together with their specialty to estimate, kind of determine what exactly someone may need to continue their line of work with their now disability. And we're actually, like I said, in the field. So we're going out there with our boots and jeans on. We're looking in the pastures. We're definitely what we call boots in the field. We have a huge staff of folks that have an agricultural background. And so that's not a necessary requirement to work with us, but it definitely helps because I have raised a lot of livestock and gardening and things like that, and it's good to have a good understanding of what we do. So I'm not an expert in anything, but as a child my first 20 years was on the farm. We raised bees, we raised catfish, we raised cattle, we raised pigs and goats and chickens and rabbits and every vegetable, every fruit, every berry imaginable. So I've got a good understanding of, different agricultural businesses. We raise worms. A lot of people don't realize we have worm farmers in Texas. And so worm farmers are, you're like, worm farming, that's so weird. But worms are very good for your soil. So even if you live in town, you can put worms into your soil and it helps to irrigate it. The worm poop is sold for really nutritious fertilizer, and so that's really good. And so also too, people like to fish and they like worms. Okay, so there's lots of things that they use the worms for, and we have people that do nothing but worm farm. So you really never think about some of the different types of farming. It's kind of surprising when you really kind of look into it if you're not familiar with agriculture business. The next little slide, we have financial assistance programs, grants, and loans. So we are AgrAbility, but my sister group here within the office is called Battleground to Breaking Ground, where we get it's open for anybody, but we mostly are catering to veterans, and we're able to get them some assistance to get them trained and help them write a business plan, help them get started in the agriculture business. And so we work with the USDA, which is, we work with Texas Workforce Commission. So Texas Workforce Commission, we don't provide any funding. We ourselves don't give you any equipment or anything, but we work with Texas Workforce Commission and we can help them navigate what your needs are. We meet with them twice a month with going over each and every client case that's open. And then we help advocate for what the farmers and ranchers need. Um, these workforce folks are really great, but most of them aren't farmers or ranchers, so they don't understand why is it that you need this. Help me to understand why it is that this would make this farmer safer, more productive, et cetera. We have, sometimes we have other folks involved that help the offset the farmer's cost. We work with some engineering students in Texas that are also on their capstone project, so about to graduate, and they will sometimes go out with us to the farm and see what the farmer needs, and they'll help with some modifications. So they might design a product to meet the needs of a specific disability, and then the farmer may offset some of the cost of the metal needed to build it, and then the students may provide the labor. So there's different things that we do that. We work a lot with our local like ag kids, and again, these are high school kids because they're always looking for a project. They're learning how to weld, they're learning blacksmithing skills, and so sometimes our farmer just needs a couple of steps added to a tractor. And these kids are able to add those steps, and then we've already measured, can this farmer safely navigate 4 inches or can they do 6 inches? Let's get the steps at a level that they can safely navigate, because again, what's easy for you to navigate 6 inches, somebody else may only be able to navigate 4 inches at a time. And so we're going to design the steps. It's a very simple thing, a step or two to get into a tractor, but we've got to do it where it's at an easy stretch for each farmer to be able to navigate. Yes, Matthew.
I did want to let you know that we're getting close to the end. Somebody
Okay,
wanted
we're
to have.
almost done. All right, thank you. Good. I've been timing it. Thank you. So economic and community benefits, next slide. Just, we're trying to keep farmers out there. That's who keeps us fed. So that'd be the next slide. We've got a gentleman with a pen. Economic benefits for our community, just supporting disabled farmers, letting them continue to farm, reducing that stigma and isolation, and encouraging diversity and representation in the agricultural field, helping to build stronger and more resilient communities. That would be the next slide. We've got people working in a field, and so we've got a lot of farmers that are, like I said, we're older. They're actually training our new farmers to how to navigate the farming community. The next slide has a farmer getting into another tractor from his chair. And so this is just kind of some case studies. So on the benefit of time, again, just showing you that we've got, lots of different needs, and meeting those needs to help farmers continue to farm. Next slide, it's got some triangles of different people, very diverse people. And so we not only serve, we serve everybody. We serve people of color. We serve women. We serve men. We serve different disabilities. We serve the farmers, families, they're workers. You don't have to own the farm. You just are, working on the farm. So there's not really any restrictions to who we serve. If you're working the land, you're trying to make a living at that, we're going to serve you. The next slide has got a Hispanic farmer in the field with a baseball cap on. And so, again, we've got a lot of veterans. They come in so excited, but a lot of times they don't realize how expensive land is. And so we work with them on that. We're able to work with some of the older farmers that don't want to get rid of their land, but are willing to lease their land. So the new farmers can lease the land, have the farming experience without the expense. And then the older farmer is able to have his land utilized and not set and be overgrown. And so it's some really good partnerships that we'll work with some of those folks. The next slide shows a woman in the field. You guys, farming is not a man's field. Okay, we have a lot of female farmers that their husbands don't help. Okay, it's just the females are running the farm. So I've got a hog farmer right now. I've got a vegetable farmer right now. I've got a microgreen farmer. That's just 3 that I can think of off the top that are female, totally run. No men are helping them. Okay, it's great for men to help, but there's a lot of women doing it themselves. So don't be afraid if you're a woman to do it by yourself. Next slide, just to reiterate, this is a Hispanic lady and a Black farmer with a bunch of vegetables in their hand. And so we are definitely inclusive, community driven, and we're trying to help people have those tools to be successful. The next slide says USDA. Again, that's who supports us. That's who pays us. We're not going out and charging those farmers anything for these evaluations. So we support them on the telephone, in person, with any questions, or sometimes we're just like a think tank for them. They're like, well, what do you think about this? And so sometimes we'll just help them through the process of what they're trying to do with their farm. So we serve that need. The next slide shows a bunch of robots working in the field. And so we were actually working with Texas A&M, has a robotic department that is now developing robotic tools to work in the field. And so these folks they're brilliant. They are building robots, but they don't know nothing about farming. Okay. And so we've been a great partnership with them to explain to them, well, you can't do that. One, you can't show up in the field with stilettos on. You've got to wear boots, those kind of things. You'd be surprised. So these things are like weeding, they're getting rid of the weeds, they're planting, they're harvesting. And so they're actually working on a program where they're developing these robots, and farmers can rent them rather than have the huge expense of owning them. So that's another project we're working on, is trying to work more with the robots in the field. The next slide just says what's going on in the future. We've got some farmers in the sunset. And so we've got a lot of AI robotic systems. We've got wearable devices. We've got remote operation of machinery, education, outreach. We have a lot of peer-to-peer networks. We have where our farmers and ranchers can actually communicate with each other. So they're like, oh, I have this problem. I have this solution. What can we do? Those kind of things. So just having people in the field that they can kind of use as peer advocates is very helpful. So we work with those folks too. And then again, if they're trying to get in the field, they don't have a good business plan, we help them with that, because if we're going to help you with funding from TWC, Texas Workforce Commission, you've got to be able to make money. So maybe you don't make money the first or second year, but you got to be on the goal to make money in the community of farming, or otherwise they're not going to support you. The last, let's see, we're down to one page here, Texas AgrAbility, our logo. We're just looking at trying to advocate, support, invest, raise awareness. I would highly encourage you to follow our, this is shameless plug, right? But follow our Facebook page, or ask for it to be included in our newsletter, because every week, at least a couple times a week, we're showing you a new tool, a cute little farm fact on what, maybe things you didn't know, like a little trivia. We're showing you recipes to use with what's in season right now. A lot of those tools and stuff obviously are made for farmers and ranchers, but what if you're having some need around your house? Maybe you're not using that tool for gardening, but a lot of times there's like kneelers and things like that. So it's a great place to see a lot of resources, and just on a Facebook page. My last panel question and answers. I'll let y'all have any of those, and then I'm gonna throw up my contact page for anybody that wants to have that information. So if you'll go to the very last slide, there's my contact. You can email me and I'll just say, got it. And I'll send it back, and it has all of our little links for the newsletter and the Facebook and all that stuff. So even if you just say, hey, Cindy, I was in your presentation, send me that stuff. And then I'll just send you a quick, thanks, and everything is already going to be on my signature line. So you guys will have that. So did I do good, Matthew? All right.
Oh, yes. Wonderful job. I think there's some questions for
Okay,
you,
great.
and we'll look at some of the audience questions as well. But one of my questions was related to people who are really not sure if farming is the right fit for them because maybe their disability might be too severe. How could you help those people?
That's a great question. So definitely, you would need to send me an email and let's set up a telephone conference where we can just visit, because there's going to be something out there for everybody. So maybe you're not working the actual land, but what if you want to run microgreens? What if you want to do a cottage industry like baked goods or honeys or essential oils or handmade soaps or any of those kind of things? All are options. So don't like say I can't do something because I've got a disability or a challenge. We're just going to try to lend you in a direction that's going to make you successful. I had a lady the other day wanted to have cattle, and she has 12 acres of land. She wanted to make a living on cattle. That's not enough acreage to make a living from cattle, but she can have one cow for beef or milk for herself, but didn't realize that's not even enough acreage to, so we kind of redirect. Don't go buy 10 cows and you don't have enough room for them on that 12 acres, because cows take a lot of acreage. So we just kind of help you navigate that.
It's good to know that for that kind of support. And my next question is, uh, guess they're going to be taking it, we'll be getting their contact information, and then you would be able to help them uh, with getting in touch with technology. How long does it take for that technology to arrive or to do all that evaluation?
Okay, so let me just, I don't know who all of our visitors are from, if everybody is attending just from Texas or we have out of state folks. So if you're in Texas, we definitely can work with you. If you're not in Texas, I would put you in touch with the folks that are in other states. If you are wanting some assistance from TWC, unfortunately, it takes about 2 years for them to fund you and get you the items. But a lot of times, it's just like, hey, again, the backup camera, perfect example. $100. Most people can save up for $100, and that sometimes can be very life changing. Um, a lot of our gardening tools, if we take something as simple, they have pool noodles. You know what a pool noodle is. They also have them for wrapping pipes, and they're a little bit less fat. Those already come with a split. By putting those on a handle, that's going to cushion it and make the grip a lot easier. So that's like a $3 fix. So there depends on what you're having challenges with. We can at least, maybe something you can fund yourself because it's $3 versus a big equipment like a chairlift, which may take them a couple of years to get the funding to do it. So unfortunately, TWC is very slow, but I always like to say, hey, if you were saving up for $20,000 for this lift, how many years would it take you to save up for that versus wait for it? I mean, and that's kind of a weird way of thinking of it, but it kind of eases the blow a little bit that way.
Okay, thank you. So, Melinda, we have some questions from the Q&A audience.
Okay, so it looks like I just have one question for you, Cindy, and you might have already answered this, but it's from Cynthia, and she's saying, "Can I send an email to set up a Zoom appointment? I am a female disabled veteran transitioning into farming."
Absolutely. She can, if she wants to have a Zoom, we can do a Zoom, or we can just do a regular old-fashioned telephone call too. If that's just as easy. So, those options are there. I've got openings. If not, this week is pretty full, but probably first of next week we could get her in. So we stay busy, but I'll get you in. It won't take that long.
Awesome. Well, that's the only question I have in the Q&A. So
Oh, okay,
great
thank
job.
you.
It was a really
Well, actually, I do
informative.
have one more question.
Oh, there you go.
So, I, what would you say would be the average age for farmers? I mean, you said about 50s and 60s, but with all of this new technology, is that age issue causing any kind of issues with these kind of programs, or is there any training that has to happen?
Well, average age is 60, so that is correct. And so a lot of the farmers have gotten really good at technology, and then we have some of them that, wow, they're still on paper. Okay, and so it makes it more challenging. And they've been, doing this for 40 years. They're not really wanting to change. And then a lot of times they'll have a young son or grandson or granddaughter or whatever come in and they'll help them with some of those things because obviously staying up with the times with any type of business is really important. Something else, I know we're on the cusp of leaving here, but something else is I will have to say that having us come in and look at your situation and your task, it's I like to put it this way. If you came over to my house, Matthew, and you said to me, wow, your house is great, but have you ever thought about moving your sofa over here? And I sit and ponder that while, later in the evening and the next day or two, I move the sofa and I'm like, man, was he right? The whole living room looks much better with that one thing changed. Okay, so a lot of times, and I say that because it's a really simple to understand example. A lot of times, what we do is come in and we're like, okay, Matthew, what are you doing here on the farm? Da da da. Have you thought about doing this? And so, for example, we saw a hog farmer, one of our female farmers, a couple of weeks ago. She's got terrible back, terrible knees. She's lifting 50-pound bags of hog food all day long because she's got all these hogs. And I look over to the side in her pasture, she's got a bunch of simple wooden pallets. And there's tons of them. There's probably 30 of them stacked there. And they were pretty close to her barn. And I said, have you ever thought about putting those in the barn at about waist level or a little below waist level and put all your food for those 50-pound bags on those pallets so that when you lift it, you're not lifting it all the way from the ground up into your trailer and stuff. And so a very simple thing, because she could drive her pickup in there, load them right off the back of her pickup at about a waist level onto the pallets, and then now retrieve them from the pallets. And so she was like, whoo, whoo, just like the whole couch example. Never thought about that. And so now that did not cost her a single penny, cost her a little bit of time. And it's just a new way of looking what she's already been doing for 20 something years. But now this task has gotten a lot more simple. When she started farming, she did not have the bad knees and back. And so it really wasn't a thing she thought about. But now that she does, it's pretty much life changing with a very simple adjustment. So, yeah, that's definitely some of the things we're going to help with.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Out
Thank
of
you
time,
all. Thank you
so
so much.
people have more questions. I'm sorry. Just contact Cindy.
Just email
if
me.
you have
Yeah,
questions.
email me. I will. Yeah, email me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so
blessings.
much, and have a great rest of the day. Bye
Yes,
bye.
y'all too. Bye bye.